Welcome, Doctor.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you, and thank you to the organizers for putting on this meeting. I want to add that in addition to Dr. Chamberlain, who is the new president of Environmental Health Trust, we're joined today by Dr. Robert Brown, a senior diagnostic radiologist, and I'm going to be sharing my talk with them today, and we'll begin by our overall presentation today is on making the invisible visible, which is the focus now of the work of Environmental Health Trust under the leadership of Kent Chamberlain as president and Robert Brown, vice president for scientific research and clinical affairs. Joseph Sandry, who is our vice president and general counsel, is not joining us in this presentation today, but that makes up our senior leadership team, along with Vice President for Administration, Sharon Kennemwe. As you heard, we've published a book called Disconnect, which is in fact available on Amazon, and I hope that you will share it with your colleagues. It is now full of updated materials, including a preface by the former president of Microsoft Canada, who has joined us as a member of our board of directors, Frank Clegg, and practical solutions for how to engage in safer technology by our former executive director, Theodora Scarrato. I'm thrilled to be working with Kent Chamberlain, who is the past chair and professor emeritus of the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering at the University of New Hampshire. He's worked for more than 4 decades in academia for a number of groups and held the prestigious Fulbright Distinguished Chair, as well as serving as associate editor for the IEEE, where he regularly performs reviews on peer-reviewed publications. Dr. Chamberlain came to public attention most recently for his work with the New Hampshire State Commission, which was convened by legislation of the New Hampshire legislature. And he has worked now with national legislators and community groups around the world to promote awareness of the need to reduce exposures to environmental factors that emit radio frequency radiation, also known as microwave radiation. Robert Brown is also joining us today, and he will follow my presentation, speaking to you about the latest science on human impacts of electromagnetic fields. He is expert in that because he's a senior diagnostic radiologist who has worked as an ultrasonographer as well as interpreter of all of the complicated imaging that we now get if we are in medicine today. He's the author of Toxic Home, Conscious Home, a mindful approach to wellness at home. I should add that none of us today is being compensated for our presentations. We are speaking today in an effort to promote the safer use of wireless radiation and encourage competition for safety. For more information, please do look at our website, ehtrust.org, and sign up for our newsletter on that site. Now, what emits wireless radiation? This image, which appeared in Environment magazine, shows a number of the agents in the home today and nearby that can emit microwave radiation. Everything from your wireless keyboard and printer to your microphones, your headsets, your AirPods, they all emit various levels and various types of power of microwave radiation. What we know about all living things, whether from plants to animals, is that we are all united by the fact that we share DNA that is basically the blueprint that tells all of our cells what to do, whether to become fingernails or toenails or brain cells. That DNA is within the nucleus of every living cell, of every living thing, whether it is plants or animals, big ones or little ones, and also humans. And you will see that that link of DNA is what we must pay attention to, because studies that have been done in insects, in trees, in bees, in birds, in higher animals, all show that electromagnetic fields can damage DNA. This is what DNA looks like microscopically. You see the nucleotides, and you see here, this image just illustrates the breaking apart of the nucleotide bonds that holds together DNA. And research has confirmed repeatedly that electromagnetic fields have the capacity to damage DNA at different levels of many different species. Radiofrequency radiation has also been shown to damage trees through observational studies. This is work from Cornelia Balsam, where she has shown and published that damage to the tree typically starts on the side facing the tower, seen here in this image in the red rectangle. This is the tower. And you can see that the tree literally looks like it's trying to move away from the radiating tower. Damage typically starts on one side and eventually extends to the whole tree. Now, you can see this movement away again here in this image from Waldman Selsam's work, also done with Alfonso Balmori of Portugal. And they have repeatedly shown this damage to trees. The question is, what kind of damage is this? Well, studies that my colleague and I, Malka Halgamug from Australia, New Zealand, produced in 2019 showed that over 1,100 studies, which we analyzed, more than 60% of them showed evidence of DNA damage. DNA damage within the leaf structures of these growing plants. And this same phenomenon of DNA damage has been found in bees as well as in rats and rodents, which are used to predict effects in human beings. The exposure of bees to 5G radiation has been demonstrated to induce heating, but has also been shown recently. You see here, this is the Western honeybee. The honeybee's wings, when it's healthy, beat more than 11,000 times a minute. And the worker bees in the hives are predominantly female, and their job is to get the job done of producing honey and protecting the hive. And they work, of course, in teams. But globally, there's been a decline in honeybees. Now, we don't know all the reasons for that decline, but one of them is certainly pesticides. Another is certainly climate change. But we submit that another contributor to the decline of honeybees could well be microwave radiation, a phenomenon which is not well studied, but merits serious attention. This is an analysis of what happened experimentally to honeybees with electromagnetic fields turned off, seen in the top left. You see here that if the towers are far away in blue, there's very little effect. But when the towers are closer in green, you see that there is, the further away the towers are, the further in time the exposure takes place, the lower the effect on heat shock protein. Now, heat shock proteins are necessary for life. And when the electromagnetic fields are turned on, seen here on the right, you see this increase. Even in the faraway towers, you see an increase in heat shock proteins here on the top right. And even up to 40 minutes that remains, and then it just drops off after 60 minutes. This is the exposure is only turned on here for the first 15 minutes. 15 minutes of exposure increases heat shock protein in the honeybee. And here you see cryptochrome, which are other critically important agents to honeybees. And the cryptochrome is here elevated, and the heat shock protein here is increased with a stress response increased when you have the towers turned on in red versus turned off. So you see the increase in the heat shock protein when the electromagnetic field is turned on. And you see that there's no change or little change when it's turned off. These others, here, the cryptochrome is here, and you see again that it's almost 2 times lower when the tower is turned on, seen here in this box with the CRY2. This is the cryptochrome 2, which is thought to be critical to navigation and other factors in the health of the honeybee. So we have microscopic studies of the impact of electromagnetic fields on the honeybee, and that has been demonstrated experimentally. And you see a number of other expressions. This is superoxide dismutase. This is other heat shock proteins. And again, you see stress responses are doubled when the electromagnetic field is turned on in the individual honeybee. Now, another study published by the Odemer and Odemer in 2019 showed that if you looked at a group of larvae that are to hatch into the bees, including the queen bees, normally larvae will produce a certain amount of queens with hatching, seen here on the green, which is the control. But with electromagnetic field exposure, just 2 weeks of phone radiation exposure during this critical gestation, there's a 44% drop in the number of queen bees. Now, obviously, the queen bee is critical to production of life for the hive. And although this appears to be reversible, the long-term effect of this damage to the honeybee remains unknown. Now, just to complete the message about how important DNA is throughout all living things, not only do we show damage to DNA in the plant and damage in the honeybee, the National Toxicology Program, which is the state-of-the-art study of how chemicals affect all of us, demonstrated in a 2-year study costing more than $25 million that rats and mice exposed to the equivalent of 36 years of exposure developed rare malignant cancers in those animals parallel to those that we've seen in people. These cancers included gliomas, which is a usually fatal cancer of the brain, and schwannomas, a rare tumor of the nerve sheath, as well as a number of precancerous changes in the brains and hearts of animals, and DNA damage in rats and mice with lower birth weight in the offspring. So the original report from the National Toxicology Program in 2018 said these findings support the International Agency for Research on Cancer determination that mobile phone radiation is a possible carcinogen to humans. There's been a lot of politics about that report, which you'll hear about from our president at the end. In general, this science has been very difficult to conduct because it's been conducted in a political microscope where the weight given to the industry point of view is much, much greater than that given to that of objective science. And that is why a number of scientists have organized to create a separate group, the International Commission on Electromagnetic Fields, that Dr. Chamberlain is a founding member of. The importance of cancer studies in rodents, I cannot overstate.